You've probably heard the word blockchain thrown around a lot, right? It's the technology that powers things like Bitcoin. But what is it really? It's one of those ideas that gets talked about all the time, but is, well, rarely understood. And its potential is way bigger than just digital money. So today, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify it. To really wrap your head around what blockchain is, let's start with a thought experiment. Just imagine for a second. What if we had a digital record book that was completely open for anyone in the world to look at, but it was impossible for any single person to alter? How would that change the way we trust things online? This is the exact problem that blockchain was built to solve.
So, probably the simplest way to start thinking about blockchain is to picture it as a very special kind of digital notebook. The trick is, this notebook isn't owned by any one person or company. It's owned by everyone who uses it.
Now, the official term for this is a distributed public digital ledger. I know that sounds a little technical, but stick with me, it's actually pretty simple. Distributed just means it's copied and spread out across thousands of computers. No one has the one master copy. It's kind of like a shared Google Sheet that everyone has their own constantly updated, view-only version of.
Okay, so if it's a blockchain, it makes sense that we should probably figure out what a block actually is, right? Let's pop the hood and take a look inside.
So think of each block like a little digital box. And inside that box, there are three really important things. First, you've got the actual data about transactions, who sent what to whom. Second, each block has its very own unique ID, which is called a cryptographic hash. The best way to think of this is like a secure, one-of-a-kind digital fingerprint. And third, and this is the absolute key, it holds the unique ID, or fingerprint, of the block that came right before it.
And that third ingredient, that reference to the block before it, that's the magic glue. That's what lets us link all these individual blocks together to build a super secure chain. Let's see how that works.
Right, so picture it. You have one block, and it's got its own unique digital fingerprint. Now, when the next block in the chain gets created, it gets its own new fingerprint, sure, but it also carries the fingerprint of the one that came just before it. That's the link. That is literally what forges the chain.
And this is where the security gets really, really cool. Because each block is pointing to the one before it, they become locked together in this perfect chronological chain. So let's say a hacker tries to go back and change the data in an old block. The moment they do that, the block's digital fingerprint changes, and that breaks the link to the next block, because that next block is still pointing to the original fingerprint. To cover their tracks, they'd have to change that block too, and then the next one, and the next one, all the way to the very end of the chain.
There's a great quote from our source material that just sums this up perfectly. This property is called immutability. It basically just means that once data is locked into the blockchain, it's permanent and incredibly difficult to mess with. And that's really the whole foundation of its trustworthiness.
Okay, so we've got this super secure interlocking chain. But wait a minute, who's in charge here? Who gets to add the next block? If there's no single boss, how does everyone agree on what's real and what's not?
And that question, that really gets to the core of what makes this whole thing so different. With a traditional bank, it's easy. The bank approves transactions. But here, there is no bank. The network itself has to come to an agreement, somehow.
The answer is a process called consensus. It's basically a fancy word for group agreement. All the participants on the network, you might hear them called miners or validators, they're all competing to be the one to add the next block. To do that, they use a ton of computing power to solve a really complex math puzzle. The first person to solve it gets the right to add their block to the chain, and then everyone else on the network instantly checks their work. If it's correct, the new block is officially added and the whole process starts over.
So when you combine that idea of group agreement with the fact that the ledger is copied everywhere, well, that's where you get this incredible security. It really is security in numbers.
Let's just put this side by side for a second. On one hand, you've got a traditional system, like a bank server. It's centralized. There's one master copy of the data, which means it's a single point of failure. If that gets hacked, you're in trouble. But on the other side, you've got a decentralized blockchain. The record book is copied across thousands of computers. There's no single point of failure. The entire network is in control, not just one company.
So let's just really hammer this home. For a hacker to succeed, they wouldn't just have to change one little block and all the blocks that came after it. Oh no. They would have to do that on thousands of computers all across the world at almost the exact same time. It's a task that is considered, for all intents and purposes, completely impossible.
All right, let's zoom out and pull all these pieces together. What are the big ideas you really need to walk away with?
It really boils down to three powerful features. Blockchain is transparent because it's a public record that anyone can inspect. It's incredibly secure because of that cryptographic chain that makes it so hard to tamper with. And finally, it's decentralized, which just means it's run by the community, not by a single central authority.
So whether we're talking about finance or supply chains or even things like voting, this technology is about so much more than just data. When you get right down to it, blockchain isn't just a new kind of database. It's a whole new foundation for building trust in our digital world. Understanding blockchain is the first step to understanding the future.